Excellent. Thank you, Gargi. Well, breaking news, we have Kristalina Georgieva, who just joined us from the Sudan summit, as we were hoping. So now I don't have only one great personality from the IMF, but I have two. And so thank you very much for joining us. Dear Kristalina, we have covered some ground. Abe has explained to us in greater detail how the SDR operation could happen. My question to you, if you don't mind jumping in the conversation, would be how can we orient this recovery? We all want a green recovery and a recovery that puts women at the center. But what are the tools to do this, and how hopeful are you that we can actually do it?
Let me first thank you for the invitation to be here. This is the new IMF. You get two for the price of one. My conviction is that the pandemic has made us all more sober and more understanding of our interdependence and our dependence on nature. It also got us to zero in on problems that we had before the pandemic, but the pandemic is exacerbating, like inequality. Take gender inequality. We weren't doing fantastically. We were moving forward, but it was not a problem solved. And what we have now as an opportunity is to turn this crisis into a chance for a transformation. How? Well, first, the countries are still putting forward stimulus because they do need to continue to support their economies while we are coming out of the pandemic. In the very early days, there wasn't much attention paid to making this injection green. In fact, in October, we took stock, and what we discovered was that only 5% of the stimulus, gigantic stimulus, by the way, now it is up to $16 trillion, went green. But this is changing, and now we see many more governments, including when I discussed this with the African leaders right here in Paris, recognizing that this transformation towards low-carbon, climate-resilient future is going to happen. And they say, wait a minute, I don't want to be left out. And they also see it more as a chance for jobs, as a chance for competitiveness, and of course, as a chance to be part of a more resilient future. What we do at the IMF is we are stepping very, very rapidly the inclusion of climate in our Article 4 consultations. That's a jargon. What it means is that we take periodically the health signals of economies, and as we do so, we are stepping into integrating mitigation, adaptation, transition. The second very important question you put was on women. And I am very pleased to say that at the fund, we saw early that this pandemic, this recession, for a reason has been called she-cession, because women are more affected. They are in contact activities, contact-dependent activities. We actually digged deeper, and the answer we got is it should be called mom session, because it is not just women, but it is women with young children, and especially low-skilled women with young children that are hit the hardest everywhere in advanced economies, in developing economies. So what we created at the fund is a very senior position of somebody who would watch over policy recommendations. Are we helping countries to tap again into the potential of women? To sum it up, there are going to be significant shifts, structural shifts, as a result of this pandemic. It is accelerating digitalization, movement to the green economy. It is bringing more awareness of inequalities, and the fund is there to provide policy advice that can help countries take this turn. I will finish with one that is particularly important: progressivity of taxation. We have seen in the pandemic, parts of the economy and society are doing very well. Other parts are falling off the cliff. Well, we have to make sure that there is fair distribution of gains in society, and we want that distribution of gains to help address inequality that was there even before the pandemic. We want to see developing countries not missing on the green transformation, not missing on the digital transformation, not missing on tapping in the talent of all men and women. And not only what we fund, but what we advise, what we recommend, is going to be a stepping stone to a greener, fairer society.
Thank you, Kristalina. And given the magnitude of the financial resources that will be made available, that's of course these are, I would say, weighty words. We don't have much time. I'd like to turn to Rémi Rioux, because he was before you arrived, he was saying something really interesting about North and South, outlining a sort of way to go beyond this division between North and South. And Rémi, could you elaborate on that a bit and explain how the summit tomorrow on the financing of African economies, but also other initiatives that you and others have taken, that AFD and others have taken, or IDFC, can contribute to blurring these categories of North and South, and how we can replace these frictions that we're seeing over vaccines and other issues with solidarity.
Let me stress the importance of what Kristalina just said. The Paris Agreement is universal. The IMF ownership is universal. So what we are speaking about is already fully beyond this so-called North-South divide. And at the IMF board, in the UN negotiations, tomorrow at the summit, we are searching for collective solutions. And we decided in 2015, that's Article 2.1c of the Paris Agreement, that we will transform the financial system. And that finance, sustainable finance, climate finance, is an end in itself. On top of mitigation and adaptation. So debt relief to correct the past can turn green, of course. Stimulus to face the present challenges can turn green. That's what Kristalina said. And investment, public investment, have to turn green. This is this Finance in Common Summit initiative system I was mentioning. And yes, we are searching. We have a clear idea at Agence Française de Développement, AFD, I'm heading, within this IDFC club you are referring to, Justine, of what it means to align with the climate objectives and the Paris Agreement, meaning verifying in each and every project we are accompanying that they are consistent with the objectives. It means also, and that's where the IMF Article 4 and programs are so important, choosing the projects in their capacity to accelerate the trajectories, the policies set by the countries. And last but not least, there's a huge debate emerging to factor in the international architecture, financial architecture, climate, environmental vulnerabilities on top of, well, revenue per capita, I mean, the usual categories that are defining if a country is eligible to specific support or not. And this debate is only starting because of climate, and there's a lot to do here, following, of course, the guidance of multilateral institutions.
Thank you, Remy. I understand the dinner at the Elysee has been delayed a bit, so I will take the opportunity to ask a few questions, and in particular, we have questions from the audience, and perhaps I will put it to you if you agree, Kristalina. There's a very simple question, which is by Martha, which is, she's saying if the reallocation of SDRs just amounts to rich countries lending to poor countries, why isn't it simply official development assistance? So how would you answer that question that many, perhaps in the North, are asking?
Right. Well, what we are doing is to create, on the strength of our richer members, a reserve asset for everybody. And that translates into de facto giving poor countries an injection of reserves and therefore of liquidity at the time of gravest need. But our articles of agreement require that we distribute this injection proportionate to the quotas of our members. And the outcome is countries that don't so much need these reserves are going to get it. Now, once they get it, they cannot simply donate. Why? Because it becomes part of their own reserves. And if they were to give it to somebody, they will have to pay interest rates on this asset. What they can do, though, is to on-lend on very concessional terms, since the interest rate on the SDRs right now is 0.05%. And they can do something very important. They can lend it on a much longer duration. As long as they keep it on their reserve balance sheet, they can lend it with very long maturity. To the person who asked the question, extending maturity with very little paid as interest is de facto creating concessionality or a grant element in the loan. If we have that grant element based on this new reserve asset, then we are helping tremendously developing countries that are eager to get resources now to invest in their infrastructure, in education, in health. Why not just put it in development cooperation? Because it is a reserve asset. It is not money that can be just simply used for whatever. It has to be used to support reserve positions. Why is it very attractive to get countries who do not need it for their reserve position to on-lend? Because of this opportunity to create concessionality and to lift up our capacity to support developing countries. We have done it last year. When the crisis hit, it was so clear we don't have enough concessional money to help our members. We went to our richer members and said, please, on-lend SDRs. They did it. The result is, we were talking with the president of Cote d'Ivoire, who told me, Kristalina, you were the first to disburse in this crisis already in April. Because you disbursed, we could protect our people. We can have protective equipment, we can have more testing, we can have more hospital beds. So the pandemic didn't really bite as much as it could have. And what I see now is this huge opportunity to do the same going forward, on land, through us, on concessional terms, so we can give access to people to fight poverty, to fight climate, to fight inequalities.
Thank you very much. So we're almost at the end of our session. Perhaps I will just go around the speakers with one question, perhaps starting with you, Gargi. If there is one takeaway you would like to see coming from the summit tomorrow on the financing of African economies, what would be your priority, or what would you like to see the most coming out of the summit? What do you think is the most important thing that the summit of tomorrow can create?
Thank you again for that question. I think there is an incredible duty to create a recovery program that sets up the future for the most vulnerable children, women, in a way that resolves some of the systemic barriers, whether that's, if you picture a woman smallholder farmer at the center of the planning tomorrow, we will address the need for adaptation to climate change, the need for digital cash transfer and information systems, the need for social protection, economic opportunity that supports that smallholder farmer, and that will be the beginning of a profound and much more equitable recovery to come from this difficult crisis.
Excellent. Thank you, Gargi. Remy, in one word, your preferred takeaway for tomorrow?
We have to pay a closer attention and to reinforce African institutions, especially the private sector. I mean, there's so much talent in Africa. We have to find a way to reach them and to finance them.
Thanks. Abe, your favorite outcome for tomorrow?
So, recognition that Africans have agency, that the future of Africa lies in the, under the control of African governments, and those governments willing to move forward reforms need to be supported strongly by the international community.
Thank you. Dear Kristalina, the last words goes to you. What's your main hope for tomorrow's summit?
A recognition we are in one boat together. We have to all row. And those who are better off, they need to make sure that they share their good fortunes, because there is no such thing as, oh, your end of the boat is sinking, but I'm just fine.
Thank you. I started this session with the metaphor of the COVID-19 giant wave, and I'm very happy to see that we're finishing with another marine metaphor. In any case, many thanks for joining us, Abe, Kristalina, Remy, and Gargi. This was a very enlightening session with, I think, many directions that will change the way we look at these sometimes technical things, but are so important for the lives of so many. Thank you again for participating. This concludes the spring meeting of the Paris Peace Forum. Please join us on November 11 to 13 here in Paris and online when we have the 4th edition of the forum, where we hope to have as big an impact as we've had so far on how the planet is governed and will do in the future. Thank you very much to all, and have a good night.
Bye-bye.